This is a tutorial to learn about the Excel SumProduct formula and how we can use it to act as an array. So when there's an opportunity to use an array but we don't like using the Ctrl+Shift+Enter, and we cannot use SumIfs unless we start adding more columns. So let's get started. To explain the SumProduct formula, what I'm going to do is an example with some phones. So I have a list here of 5 different phone types. So you have a Galaxy, iPhone, LG, OnePlus, and a Pixel. So I'm going to do a relatively simple VLOOKUP formula here just to get a list of random items. So let's do a list right here, and we're going to do rand between to give us a random list, and this is going to be a random list between 1 and 5. And here we're going to VLOOKUP value right next to it and this table. So the reason we're doing this is so that we can get a random list populated and I don't have to try and make up a bunch of random things for you guys. Let's go all the way down. Alright, we have a random list of all of our phones. This is going to be the item list. You notice that every time that I hit enter, or anytime a value changes in the workbook, it's going to repopulate these random values. So what I'm going to do now is value these out. So Control C and right click and value out. Now I can delete this column. Don't need these items anymore. Let's do the same thing for dates. So rand between, whoop. And let's go between the first of the year and the end of January. So there we go. Let's go all the way down to all the values that we have an item with. And we will value that out and change the format to a short date so we understand what it is. Okay, so what I want to do now is grab sales that are populated for these specific dates. So let's do a rand between again. We're gonna have sales between 200 and 500. Populate all the way down. Right click, values. Okay. So what I'm wanting to do is really a SumIf, but I want to do it on the weekday of the dates. So notice right now we can't do that with the normal SumIf function. The reason being is you cannot nest a weekday function inside of a SumIf. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So let's do item number, weekday, and sales. So equal, well, so we'll get a list of the phone. Let's see. I'm just going to populate it by removing. So actually an easier way of doing weekdays is going to be going across. Let's do that. So weekday is going to be Monday, Tuesday, and at this point we should be able to drag it. There we go. There's Friday, Saturday. And just so we understand the weekday function, we say weekday, here's the date, and weekday is actually going to be a number from 1 to 7 or from 0 to 6, however you want to identify it. So I'm going to start on a Monday, so I want any of these three, and I want it to start Monday with a 1. So let's do number 2. There we go. So that means that this day should be a Tuesday. If I look at my calendar, it is actually a Tuesday. Okay, so to get this function to work, I'll need to have the actual number above here so it can identify it with a SumIf or with an array that we're going to use later. So that's what the weekday function looks like. Let's try and do a SumIf. SumIf, yeah, I should do SumIfs. I'm going to sum the sales. First criteria range is going to be the item, and that's going to look at this iPhone or whatever it is in column H. So I'm going to change the absolute value to the H3 so you can see the $ in front of the H. Next range is going to be the weekday of whatever this column provides. So the weekday is going to be value type 2. That's the range. And the criteria is going to be whatever this is in row 1. So let's make the $ in front of the 1. Close parenthesis. Forget is to make the C absolute. You cannot do that. You're nesting a function. It says essentially there's something wrong with the formula. It doesn't know what you're trying to do inside here with the weekday, which is sad. Really nice if we could do a SumIf with that. So we have a little snag here. So normally what I would do is I would just add another column in there for weekday, and let's have the weekday function here. So weekday of the date, comma 2, have this formula go all the way down, and now when we drag this across, we should get some values populated. There we go. So the sales here, which is 12,009, should equal the same, if we sum that up, 12,009. Good. So this is the SumIfs, trying to get the weekday of the sales of these items. So really it's a nested function that we'd want to do in a SumIfs. We can't do that. So I'm going to show you a method that we do with the array formula and how we can do it with SumProduct, just so we're all aware. So the array formula is convenient in that it's a lot easier to follow, I guess. A lot more people are familiar with the array formula, and that is done with a Ctrl+Shift+Enter. So Ctrl+Shift+Enter makes an array. Array is something that you can do multiple functions on individual cells rather than having to make a column that is that function. So what I mean by that is if you want to do the weekday of all of these cells, there is no one value for a weekday. So when we tried to do it with the SumIfs, it was trying to look at one value doing that weekend or weekday function, and it wasn't able to do it. So the array is going to say, oh, you want to do a weekday on this range? We're going to do it on every individual cell within the range. So it's really convenient. I love arrays, but I hate having to do the Ctrl+Shift+Enter. So I like to find ways where we can kind of skip that step of Ctrl+Shift+Enter, and we can just go right into doing an array. So what the array looks like, do it right here. We're going to do a sum formula and a couple ifs inside. So first if, going to be if this range right here, and I'm going to make it absolute so that when we drag it across all the phones and all the weekdays, it stays this range. It doesn't shift to the right or down. So if that range equals whatever's in column H, so in this case the iPhone. So if it does equal that, then we're going to do another if statement. So if the weekday of this range, make that absolute, comma 2, equals whatever this value is in row 10. So row 10, if both of those are true, then we are going to get the sales. Make that absolute. If it's not, then we're going to get 0. We're not going to sum it up. So close parenthesis, and then we need to end the other if statement. This is the second if, which is right here. So we need to do a comma. You can see now it's highlighting this. If it's false, then do a 0. Okay, and then end the sum. So I'll show this is not working currently because we haven't done the array yet. So as soon as we activate with array, so go up here in the formula bar at the very end and do a Ctrl+Shift+Enter, and notice it does these squiggly brackets. You can't type them in, you have to do Ctrl+Shift+Enter, and that activates the array, and now we can drag it across and it does an array for each individual cell. So one of the reasons why I don't like array is if you want to edit this at all, you click in here. Even though I didn't make a change, I just hit enter and it removes the array style. So I have to go back, do Ctrl+Shift+Enter, and then there's the squiggly. So we'll just make sure it works again, 12,009. So still the same as the sales here, 12,009. So you're thinking, man, that's a pain in the butt having to do that array. I know. So how about we do another method? Let's copy the same format, go to row 20, paste it here, delete all these cells. So this is the SumProduct. So SumProduct, this is typically done just multiplying one column with another column. So in this case what we're going to, so notice these are just arrays in here. So think an array, multiplying a column by a column, that's a little bit different than what we're doing here. We're doing functions within arrays. There is a method of doing functions inside of the SumProduct array. So to do that, I should just do a negative negative or a dash dash. So let's do open close parenthesis, and inside of here, this is where we're going to do our if statement. So with an array, if a value is true, then it's going to contain a value of 1. And if it's false, it's going to be 0. So essentially what we're doing is we're multiplying multiple arrays, and if the condition is true, it's going to be a 1. So essentially we're doing a 1 times a 1 times whatever some other value is here, which in this case is our sales. So that's if both are true. If any of those are false, if any of these arrays happen to be false for one of the records, it's going to multiply by 0. When you multiply by 0 to anything, it's going to be 0. So if it's not true, then you're not going to sum that value, which is what we want. So first thing we're going to do, let's keep it the same format that we did with the array. We're going to do an if statement with the phone. So make it absolute with that range. Whoop, you do a comma, or not a comma, an equal. So absolute for that range. If that equals the iPhone, which we're going to have it stay constant in column H, close parenthesis. Whoop. Okay, so go outside the parenthesis, comma. Let's do our second array, dash dash, and here we're going to do the weekday of this range right here, absolute. If the weekday, comma 2, equals and we'll have it be whatever's in row 20. And close parenthesis for that second array, comma. If both those arrays are true, it's going to multiply it by whatever's in column C. So I love when we hit enter, there's 0 because nothing on Monday. Okay, let's drag that across, drag it down. So what this is doing, let's actually go to the formula so you can see this visually. Actually, we'll go to one that has a value or multiple values. Looks like this 1289 should have multiple records. Alright, so here we're looking at the iPhone on a Thursday. So here's an example right here, 460. Let's go down, see wherever there are a few others right here, 432. So we have 3 or 4 records where it's on a Thursday. Here's another iPhone on a Thursday. So when we populate this, so right now I went to formulas and evaluate formula, and this is just stepping through so we can actually see what the SumProduct is doing. So the first thing it's doing is it's going through and making sure that the item is an iPhone. If it's an iPhone, it's going to be true. If it's not, it's going to be false. So notice whenever it shows up, there's going to be quite a number of them. It's done with this, goes on to the next. Notice how it underlines here. It says these are true and false. You're thinking, well, Kyle, didn't you say that it's supposed to be 1 and a 0? Yes, I did. So 1 and a 0, true and false. Notice when we hit evaluate, it's going to repopulate these. So even though it's saying true and false, it's reading it as a 1 and a 0. So right here it's looking at the weekday of B. Notice it's not referencing column D at all. I only have column D here so we can see it because I don't know what these weekdays are. I'm not that good yet. Let's evaluate that. Notice all these true falses turn to 1s and 0s. And this populated all the weekdays for every individual cell inside of the range that we provided. So, like I said, that's what an array essentially does. So it's looking through all these weekdays and saying, okay, is it equal to L20, which L20 in this case is a 4. So here it's doing a bunch of true falses. Notice there are some trues in there. So if there are trues that match up, so for instance this first record, what it's going to do is take this 1, multiply it by this first record, which is a false because it's not a weekday 4. And then it's going to multiply it by whatever is in cell C2, the first record in the third array. So as soon as I hit evaluate, this is the last range that it's evaluating, so it's going to populate an answer for us. Essentially it's going to look at every individual cell inside of the third range, which was C, and it's going to line them up saying, okay, first array, second array, third array, multiply those together, and it's going to sum that for every individual record inside of the arrays. So that's how we get the 1289. Hopefully this is helpful, being able to understand SumProduct. This is an extremely powerful function, and if you show this to your buddies at work or wherever you're using this, they will be impressed. So if you have any questions about it or have any comments, please post them below. Otherwise, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing some more of these tutorials, and I'll see you in the future. Thanks.